Even men at the top of their game find themselves wanting more from life. Whether it's more meaning, unshakable confidence, a bigger impact, more money, deeper love, a hotter sex life, or a powerful legacy. Find out how good your life can be on this episode of Man Alive. Also, as I've supported men in their love and work lives for 15 years now, many men ask for the right words to say to be more successful, attractive, and desirable. But I found it's not so simple as giving scripts or lines because every man is different. So giving words or scripts would be like giving a tall, thin man a shorter, wider man's pants, or vice versa. The words have to make sense for you and your personality, and there's so much happening beneath the surface that people are responding to. If you're interested in how to become a better lover and leader in your own unique way, go to shanajamescoaching.com/quiz, or you can text ALIVE to 44144. It only takes a couple minutes and you'll start to get an idea of how you can be both more respected and desired. After you fill it out, we can schedule a time to review your quiz and talk about your specific challenges and desires. So again, go to either shanajamescoaching.com/quiz or text ALIVE to 44144. That's ALIVE to 44144. Enjoy this episode of Man Alive. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Man Alive. I'm your host, Shana James, and I have a special treat for you today. I'm so excited to be here with two women who I adore and admire, and we're going to go into the realms of what is possible in sex for you. And we're going to look from both the Taoist and the Tantric perspectives. And so we have two experts and sexologists here today. We've got Dr. Willow Brown and Leah Piper. Welcome, ladies. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Such a pleasure.
Yes. Well, I have, done work with each of you and known you in different contexts. I remember, God, it probably was more than a decade ago doing Leah workshop with you on tantric massage, and Willow, I've been around your work for a long time, so I know that you two are doing amazing work. And why don't we start by diving in with how has sex transformed for each of you as you've gotten deeper into the work that you're doing?
Like our own personal sex?
Yeah, I mean, you can get as personal as you want, but as we're going into that theme of like what's possible in sex, I think it's hard sometimes to describe what changes. You know what I mean? Like, what is even possible? So yeah, anything personal in there is great.
Yeah, well, I would say, I've had my tantric debut a little bit more recently, probably than Leah. She's been at this a very long time. And so in the last couple of years, there's just been so much more, that the kind of sexuality that you always knew you could have and you always knew was possible. Like even way back in high school as a teenager, I was always such a fantasizer, and I would fantasize about the depth and the connection and the intimacy and the hotness and what I would really want out of that level of like tantric sexuality. And now I'm able to create that. So I think a big part of it for me has been asking for what I want, opening my throat chakra, for a long time. Even now people will be like, what, huh? What'd you say? Because my voice has been very, no, just in general, my voice is pretty
soft.
Yeah, it's soft and it can blend into the environment. And, so it's always been a thing for me to like get my voice out, get my throat out, and get my requests clarified inside of myself and inside of my heart enough so that I can ask for them. And I mean, I share this with all of my clients. I'm like 9.5 times out of 10, when you ask for something, you're going to receive it. Well, you're going to get it, but then you have to be able to receive it too.
There you go.
So those are two different things, right? Yeah. And I think that's another thing that's really opened up for me is my receptivity, asking and then really having someone show up in the way that they know how to show up with whatever I'm asking for and to provide that, then I get to receive in a way of surrender. Yes. Not so much of like, oh, you're not doing exactly what I was asking for, but like, oh, this is your variation of it. This is your understanding of it.
I'm going to say
yes
now, to this.
Yeah. And so let me receive that. And of course, I'm also picking, partners who already have this sort of level of connection with their bodies, with energy. They're practitioners, most of them.
Yeah.
And that makes a big difference for me.
Yeah.
So I've been, feeling a lot of satisfaction in the last
So
couple of
great.
years, and
I
it's
love
been really fantastic. And then also right now I'm in a huge fucking pause period, like I haven't had any good sex in like, I think 5 or 6 months. It's been a while,
Been a while.
and
Well,
so
I think men can relate to a lot of that. I can think men can, like this isn't gendered, right? And so a lot
right.
of men I work with have a hard time asking for what they want and receiving, and then also, going through these periods of sometimes you're having sex and sometimes you're not, and
Yeah.
finding partners who actually want to, go into this with you. And maybe a little later we'll get into the how to lead or how to invite, someone into this kind of sexuality or sensuality with you, because there are people out there in the world who are practitioners. We don't all have the blessing of finding those people as partners or knowing those people or loving those people. But I do believe and have in my own life, right? Like created that sense of, okay, here's what and it takes asking, right? Here's what I want. Here's what I want to play with. How can we play with this together? Yeah. Yeah. All right. Juicy pause.
Yeah. But I'll share a little bit. It's been interesting, journey. I discovered Tantra when I was 18, which is
Wow.
really uncommon to be that young.
Yeah.
And I had a sexual abuse background, so sort of initiated into like my sexual sensations at an inappropriate age, let's face it, probably not ideal. But so that was confusing and wounding and traumatic. So it kind of came from there. And I was also like really horny and had all these like religious confusion about that because, who I was supposed to be as a good girl was in conflict with what I was feeling in my body.
Oh my God.
And
I think
so,
men can relate to that too, right? The good girl, nice guy,
yeah,
simpatico.
yes. And so what I needed, having had the trauma, I needed the sacred.
Yeah.
I needed to be like invited into this realm where I could feel beautiful, where I could be healed, where I could be loved, because I came from a place that felt so much shame and so much guilt. And I felt so ugly about that.
Yeah.
So it was like Tantra invited me into this sacred space of like, no, you can turn this around.
Yeah.
This can be totally different. And it's everyone else who's got it wrong. If everyone could figure out that this is actually a place where pleasure can be totally explored and accepted and reveled in.
Yes.
And I could be in my total nakedness, and instead of feeling used and abused, I could feel cherished and adored and worshipped. So like that was the world. Thank God I was able to usher myself in that direction because I desperately needed it. It kind of felt like a life or death thing. That's how deep the shame was. And now, 20 years later, it's like, oh, I want the profane.
She's gone down the BDSM track.
I mean, well, I don't know about BDSM, but definitely kink.
Tie me up. Kink.
And really, I'm just like a baby in looking at that inside of myself. Really, I'm stepping into it from the world of erotic reading or in erotica. And I'm finding myself self-pleasuring in a way I have never self-pleasured in my life.
So beautiful. And it's beautiful to come to the profane from the sacred, because then it's honoring. It's not avoidance. It's not whatever
it's
it
not
could
distraction.
be.
It's not coming from pain. It's coming from a place of wholeness and a foundation. That's a really solid foundation.
Yeah, it's like my menu just got really big. And what I'm loving, what I'm reveling in is that I'm moving into realms that I judged and had a lot of fear around.
Yeah.
Like, penises always kind of scared me. I was never good at blowjobs. I always felt like my jaw was too small. I didn't really get the feeling I was wowing anybody. Where I felt like I was really good was being a great receiver and being very responsive. So I felt like that's where I got a lot of affirmation from partners. And now I'm in a place where it's like, oh no, I want to master being a giver. Like I want to be so good at blowjobs. Like I'm ready to deepen my skill set with blowjobs. Like I've never
any heterosexual man's dream.
It's so exciting. Like I'm like, fuck my face. It's so weird to actually
want that
authentically desire that because that
Yeah.
was never in the realm of my of possibility.
Wow.
So I'm kind of feel like I'm going into a whole nother sexual awakening in my 40s.
Yes.
I'm turned on to a new level. I'm open-minded at a new level.
Yep.
I'm ready to get like down and dirty at a level that I've always been afraid of. So I feel liberated to the next level. So I
Yeah.
feel like it's Tantra 2.0 for me,
Amazing.
but it doesn't have to
Amazing.
have all of the pageantry to
No,
it.
and I'm thinking about how, okay, so for some men listening, you're going to be like, holy shit, I want that, right? I want a woman who's that excited. And then some men, well, probably all men, I'm guessing, who are listening, who are heterosexual, right, would think that. Then I could see there's two different tracks. One is the like, okay, how would I support that? How would I support a woman to feel that much desire?
Right.
And the other would be
That's important.
hopelessness, right? Like
Like
Scared,
that could never
intimidated.
happen.
never
Yeah.
gonna happen.
I'm never gonna find that in a woman.
Yeah. And so as we talk about what is possible, I'm wondering, how do you support men specifically here to like become leaders and inviters and the one who's like, oh yeah, I know what's possible here and come with me, right? Versus, oh fuck, man, that's never going to be my life, or that's a fantasy that's never going to happen. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah. And I do think it's a real obstacle. I mean,
Yeah.
I was just looking at a study that said like 60% of women want to kind of be dominated,
Yeah.
where 30% of men authentically feel like they want to dominate.
Interesting.
So we have like, so that's part of
gap.
what I'm exploring is like, I kind of want to be dominated. I kind of want to be submissive. I want to play into that space. And my husband, I think, would have been all into that when we first met.
Uh-huh.
But now, like, we've got 8 years together and he knows all the places I've been reactive. And so he's like, I'm having a hard time reconciling believing you.
Uh-huh.
So it's like
Interesting.
you're saying you're like open to all of this. So we're kind of going through our own rub.
Oh, right. Like you're open to all this, but you weren't a bunch of years ago.
Yeah.
And so how do I know if this is really
he's like, I felt like I
true?
scared you if I was too like
to throw
dirty
you
and rough,
against the wall.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And he did.
Yeah.
And so instead of getting stressed out about it, our job is to notice where we're closed, take a deep breath into that closed place, and then get curious.
Yes.
So I don't need him to provide this for me right away. We got all the time in the world.
There's not an urgency or a panic of this has to happen now.
I'm not stressed out. I'm not demanding. Right now, I'm on my own sovereign journey. And so I'm inviting him to tap into his own deeper desire. And he has the right to be in his own timing and ripening for that.
Yeah.
So it's my job to be responsible for my pleasure.
Yeah.
And it's his job to be responsible for his desire and pleasure. We may not always be on the same timeline.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe the conversation starts with, baby, what opens you, what closes you, and making space for that to change as we go along.
I love it.
What opens you, what closes you. It's not about like,
and it's
I now am responsible for meeting your needs. No, you're not. You're responsible for staying open with me.
Yes.
And being authentic to yourself.
Yeah,
I love it.
I think that I want to say that piece that you said of standing in your sexual sovereignty. I think that's what women can do to support men into that opening and that place, because there's so much in our sexual history where it's like the man has to do all the work. He has to perform. He has to set the tone. He's got to be the romantic. He's got to do all of these pieces, right? Yeah. And he's so attuned to her. And is she responding? Is it working for her? That he can't even feel his own body, right? He's not even tuning into what's happening inside of him. So if a woman can really stand in that place of like, look, I got me, baby. I'm doing this thing over here, and you're welcome to come to the party at any level that you're ready to come to the party at. And I can really be in my own body around this. And that gives men permission to actually feel themselves and where they're blocked and
Right.
where they're scared and where
Yeah.
their triggers
Totally.
are.
Well, and
Right,
I know
permission
that
to take up
many,
space, men, you know, like
yes,
it
Yeah.
seems like oftentimes they think that women are the ones that are only allowed to take up the space and to
yeah,
have
I
all
think
the
that's so true. So
stuff.
true.
And it's
Sounds and movements. No.
right,
Well, and
yeah.
I
And
Get
think
you're
in
that
your
a
like,
lot
sexy
of men,
Shakti.
like, well, I would love to hand these amazingly open-hearted men, women who are open in their sensuality too. But, part of what I think I work with is, all right, men, here's how you can have a conversation that starts to ignite a woman's desire, right? Here's how you can have a conversation. Here's how you can talk about sex and unravel some of the, like you said, Leah, some of what's been there in the past in your relationship, and how you can get current in this moment, and how you can, love each other. Because I feel like there's a way, I don't want to put all the work on men, but I'm curious what you ladies think of this. It does feel like a man can love a woman into loving sex, because rather than being resentful or frustrated or just like, I'm mad at you for not being open in the sexual ways I want you to, it's going to happen much faster or smoother with love and acceptance and welcoming. You know what I mean?
yeah, and I
Absolutely.
think
Yeah.
curiosity, because that's always curiosity is the key to getting out of judgment. So
Mhm.
if we're angry because being they're not showing up in their turn on or in their libido to match ours,
Yep.
right? I'm speaking sort of for men in this position of like, I want more sex and I'm not getting it.
Yep.
That judgment is not going to get you more sex.
No.
Mm-mm.
That is going to shut her down, make her feel inadequate,
Yep.
put her into an obligatory role of feeling she has to show up when she doesn't feel like it, which means
Yep.
her body's going to be closed.
Yep.
She's going to try to force it to open, and it's going to lead to kind of crappy sex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's if you can notice when you're feeling a sense of judgment, I'm not getting what I want, and switch to, oh, I'm not getting what I want. I wonder how we could be more creative
Yes.
in us both getting what we want.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder what she wants.
Mm-hmm.
And then from that point go, hey babe, what accelerates you and what puts the brakes on you? And so to just kind of go like, what causes you to rev and what causes you to break?
Yeah.
And kind of using some different language so that if you can hear what causes her to want to stomp on the brakes,
Yeah.
you can start to pick up what you need to shift.
Yeah.
And when she can start to examine, gee, what does light me up? What does make me want to get ahead of that green light? Then she has a place of inquiry, and she's going to have to find some language to describe that. And I think that's what's really hard for women.
Yeah.
You know what is
We
one of
don't
the
know what we want. We just know what we
yeah.
don't want.
Yeah.
Not very helpful.
And you know what is one of the hardest things and pieces for women too is they're fatigued. Their adrenals are shot. I mean, that's all the women
You
I
work
work
with that a
with.
lot.
Yeah. And so like they don't even have the chi for it. They've, and they're so it goes beyond the bedroom. It goes beyond sexuality. Like
Yep,
what
it
what
does.
does she want in life? Like how can you support her? How can you take some shit off her plate? Because
Yeah.
women are the way that our minds work. If you're a man listening, please pick up the female brain and listen to it. Luann Bresendine, you will learn so much about the female brain and our hormones and how they work in our body, and it will completely change the way you relate to women.
Yeah.
Because we're like making sure all the shit gets done, and the pillows are right and the
Hard to
blinds and
fucking
the
stop.
I mean it's really a thing that happens for us, and men don't really have that, and they don't have it to that same level,
Which makes it
If
easy to resent that and be frustrated
for
by it.
sure.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, it comes to communication and using your voice and asking your partner, like, how can I support you in feeling more vitality and energy in your life?
Yes.
Then, once you've been doing that for 2 or 3 months, then start to ask her, like, what revs you up? Do you like this stroke on your clitoris? What about this pressure on your G spot? How do you like a little bit of anal play? Like, find out that stuff when you've been supporting from the other side as
From
well.
the
But
lack
do
or the scarcity.
from a place of love. I mean, and think about, you're doing it for her, but you're doing it for yourself too. It's like a bank account. And how are you putting pennies into her penny jar every single day? And how many are you putting in? Because the more full her penny jar is, the more fulfilled she is going to be and ready to explore at the sexual level that you're looking to explore at.
Yeah. And I love that you gave the timeline of, I don't know, you might have just thrown this out there, but okay, do that for 2 to 3 months and then, right? So I think a lot of men think like, fine, I'm going to,
do
help with the dishwasher tonight and then sex is going to happen. But that's why I wrote Honest Sex too, right? It's like the foundation of passion and intimacy that stays alive is that deeper honesty and curiosity. And so, right, if it can take some time to unravel the patterns that are already there rather than, all right, I'm going to do this one thing and then sex is going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, if she's holding on to resentment because you never unload the dishwasher and it's not going to change overnight, like it's something that you've got to put the pennies in, you've got to put the time in and show that you care about the entirety of her. Mm-hmm. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day and he's like, he's got a couple teenage boys and he's like, they just, for us men, it's like, it's not even like a whole woman. We don't look at a whole woman and get attracted by her. It's like the curve of her shoulder or the way her hair brushes her neckline,
her laugh,
or even like eyes. A mannequin, the way the panty line hits that mannequin's booty, like that can turn a man on. And for us as women, generally speaking, total generalization, it's not so much of that. Like we want the connection, we want the intimacy, we want to be understood and seen,
and
yes.
Yeah. It's not about the different. Visual. It's about like the sensation, I think, for women.
Yeah.
And I think also I would advise men to ask specific questions. So there's open-ended questions like dreaming together. If we had all the money in the world, how would you redecorate our bedroom? Okay, that's really fun. If we had all the money in the world, where would you want to travel to first? Open-ended questions are great for connection. But when it comes to how do you want to touch a woman, what does she want next? What does she like? Women don't always do well with open-ended questions in that case. They need options.
You're like,
so it's like,
I think men too.
Do you like it when I lick
gendered even?
Yeah, right. Yeah. It could be anybody. It helps to have, for instance,
multiple choice.
Yeah. Why don't you get in the bath and I'm going to set up the bed. And do you think 15 minutes is enough time? And I can invite you to lay down and I'll give you a massage. Or would you rather go with 5 minutes? It's like, it's like you give them 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half hour. What I really love on you is that white see-through nightgown. But if you'd rather have a sarong, I love the pink one. And you give them a couple options to choose from instead of like open-ended or too many where we get decision fatigue. And so it's like when I touch your nipples, do you like it when I pinch them? Do you like a little pain, or do you prefer me sucking on them, or do you like it when I just massage the outside and I wait a while to touch the center? So you give them options, and she may go, well, I don't know. And you say, okay, how about I start with sucking them, and it's like, and then we'll go from there. Yeah. So when you can have the courage to open your own throat, and actually do the vulnerable description of what you think they might like to their body, what you might like to their body, and give a couple options, then she has a place to give you information. But if you just go, what turns you on? If you just go, what do you like?
It can be like deer in headlights.
Yeah.
Well, and thank you for bringing in the word vulnerable too, because, it doesn't seem like it should be. And I think for a lot of men, they're like, it doesn't seem like it should be vulnerable to just say something. But so many men come to me with this sense of, or the fear of rejection, right? So if I say this and she doesn't want it or like it, then I'm bad, or I'm dirty, or I'm wrong. And, it's not my belief. And I know that's not your beliefs either, right? I think we have so much shame that we have to work through, often from our younger experiences.
Yeah.
But to remember too, that I always say, there's no wrong desire. There may be mismatched desires, and then we get to kind of work with those, but there's nothing wrong to want or to say or to ask for.
Yeah. Sometimes it feels like talking about specific sexual stuff feels like high stakes, because just putting the words in your own mouth. It took me years to be able to figure out what my pussy liked.
Yeah.
It took me years to go, you know what I really like? I like when I'm laying on my belly and you roll open my thighs and then you tickle my yoni from the back. And there's this little spot. I think of it as the doorbell. Like, it took me
To be
forever
able to say
to
that.
be
I
able
know.
to say those things. Not only to say them, but
Yeah.
to say them to myself. And
Yeah.
then it took a
And
bunch
then
of
to speak
time
them out
to
loud.
say it to somebody else. And then
Yep.
it took me a long time to tell them to in front of a group of people. And it's taken me a long time to say it on a podcast. You know, like,
And
it's
totally.
a
And I think
thing.
men have that added pressure of, God, okay, so I'm just imagining being a man in this moment, and that pressure of there's something about it that the shame is that it would not be manly to sit to ask for what you want, or to say if something's pleasurable, because like pleasure can be associated with, feminine. I don't know. There are some men I think who are great about knowing what they want and taking it, but most of the men I work with tend to be more in that nice guy category, and they're trying to be respectful and kind, and
Yeah.
haven't always been told that their pleasure and their turn on is actually amazing.
Is valuable and is worth asking for. And I think that is just like Leah said, it takes time, and it's just a matter of practice. I mean, the very first time I asked someone if they wanted to have a tantric exploration day, you could have heard my heartbeat like a million miles away. It's just you have to break through what feels uncomfortable. If what you've been doing all along isn't working, then you've got to try the opposite or something else, and it's not comfortable at first. It's like if I was going to start playing basketball tomorrow, I would be sore as shit and I would suck at it for several months. But if I played every day, I'd get good at it. It's a muscle. And so knowing what's in your heart, getting clear, and also sovereign about what's in your heart. If you want to have anal sex and you've never had it, and you've been with your partner for 25 years and you're like, I know she's a no to it.
Right.
There's hope for you yet, and part one is like, you've got to own that there's no shame in that. That's actually,
I think the shame piece is so important, because if you don't have the shame, if you're not bringing the shame, then if someone says no, it's like, oh, all right, well, maybe let me find out, figure out a different way, or let's collaborate, or we can, kind of negotiate.
Well, and I'll tell you, as a woman, here's what would open me versus here's what would close me in that specific conversation. Is my compassion, my ability to listen, my ability to want to really be there for you, is if you preface the conversation with, I'm a little scared to speak this desire out loud. Exactly. I have some shame around it. And I love you and I trust you. And so I want to trust you to be able to hold this desire for me. I'm not saying you're obligated to fulfill it, but I would love us to get closer and to be intimate enough that we can both talk about what we feel ashamed of, what we're sort of afraid to say, and that you'll hold it for me, like as if it's sacred, even if you have like a visceral reaction to it. I need you to know that this is hard for me to communicate out loud. So please treat this with sensitivity.
Totally. And if you don't have that level of trust in your relationship, then you've got to back up and create that, right? And create that honest communication and curiosity and love and respect. Like, ooh, even if you cringe when I say the thing I want, can you kind of hold that cringe and actually still see me through loving eyes? And, can we actually talk about it and hear what's happening for you, but not from a place of blaming, shaming, or attacking me, but from, your own navigation in there.
And backing up even further is, you've got to co-create that level of trust between you through conversations like this, but you've got to be able to trust yourself. Because intimacy is really based on trust, presence, and vulnerability. And if you don't trust yourself, there's no way you can trust the other person. And then you can't be vulnerable with them. And then you can't create that. And then the presence just comes. When trust and vulnerability are in a cycle between two people, the presence, it has to be there. It's an organic part of the process.
Well, I love what you just said, Willow, because I think you said something that gets overlooked all the time, is people think that the trust is in the other person. I need to trust you, but you got it backwards. It starts with, I have to trust me.
Yeah.
You have to cultivate the trust on this side. The door to trust opens in here, over in your lane. You work on that first, and then your ability to trust others actually expands.
Yeah.
And then that fosters trust. But if you think that it's the other person's job to be trustworthy first before you trust yourself, you're not going to have success.
Right.
Yeah.
And that trust is built on the sovereignty and the releasing the shame, right? You can't trust yourself if you're ashamed of all the things that are happening in there. Sorry.
And
Willa,
it's a
I cut you
two-way
off.
street. Like if I'm showing up and I'm asking you to say, look, I want to say this vulnerable thing. I'm afraid you're going to be grossed out. I have some shame around it, but I need to be free from the shame that I hold around
Yes.
it. You also have to cultivate within yourself, giving them the same opportunity to go, wow, when I hear that, I have a couple of
Right.
reactions. First is my gut gets a little squeamish,
Mhm.
and I'm afraid that if I tried that with you, it would hurt. And what if it's gross? And so like you also have to kind of be willing to
To
hold
receive and
their
hold that. Yeah.
shame and their worries. And so you can do those things ahead of time
Yes.
before you take the risk
Mm-hmm.
in having that conversation, and just acknowledge, yeah, it is high stakes. It sucks when somebody rejects you.
Yeah, it
When
does.
you've just like opened your heart out and you're like,
Sucks. And like
don't
we
run.
move through it and we
Doesn't
get
go.
over it, especially when there is that vulnerability and trust together, and when we're trusting ourselves. Willow, what were you going to say?
I was just, trusting myself. For myself comes much more easily than for many people in the world. Some of us, it's very second nature. It's very easy. For others of us, it's very challenging. And that is based on our upbringing. It's based on our childhood. And for those who were parentified or had to become the parent early on in their childhood, had to be the one to get the younger siblings to school or take care of their parents because of alcoholism or drug abuse or just whatever, just some kind of dysfunction in the family. Those people have a harder time trusting anyone outside of themselves, right? And so it's so interesting because a lot of men and women and everyone in between who have this harder time trusting self, they show up as like, I got this. They're very capable, they have it
Very
seemingly
competent.
all together, but underneath all of that, there's this missing crucial piece of, I don't trust myself enough to trust you. So I'm sitting in this resentment.
Yeah.
Or like for me is I just made mistake after mistake after mistake of like attracting the wrong person. And for years, I didn't think I was capable. It was like, how am I going to break? How can I even trust myself when my picker is so off?
Yeah. Well, which is good, right? You don't want to trust yourself when your picker's so off. You want to actually cultivate that and start with what's real, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Crucial. Start with where you're at. I mean, I have some clients who are like, well, I'm listening to all your podcasts. Leah and I have a podcast, by the way, called Sex Reimagined. Come check it out. So and it's like, you guys are talking about all this stuff. Keep in mind, we've been cultivating for over 20 years. And so you have to start with where you're at. You cannot jump ahead. You could blow a fuse if you do.
Don't skip steps.
Yeah. So really meeting yourself where you're at so that you're in your trust of yourself. This is where I'm at. This is what's true for me. Trusting yourself is being solid in what's true for you, knowing what that is, and then being able to, when you're in that place, then you can hold whatever is going to come from the other person. Like, oh, I don't know if I want to try. That sounds painful or gross or weird, like you'll be able to have so much more, I don't know what the word is. Solidarity is coming to my mind inside of yourself,
Well, and if you look at like, okay, here's conditioning, right? So maybe I had an immature parent who wasn't responsible, and I felt like I always had to be the one that was taking care because they were always out to lunch, right? So now like I can't trust my caregivers. So I'm the only one I can depend on, right? Which is kind of a setup. So, and no matter what your conditioning is, there's not a lot you can do about it, right? That was our conditioning. In order to change our conditioning now, and to start the process, like Willow said, you got to start with where you're at now. And you need to take a look at what's your conditioned environment. Who do you hang around? Who do you admire? Are you surrounding yourself with people that you respect? Are you surrounding yourself with people? And maybe it's just making one change. Maybe it's just finding one person who seems to have one part of their life that you admire, that you want to have that kind of function in your life too. So get your body next to their body. Because sometimes it's not always like an intellectual, this is what you have to learn from your mind. Sometimes
Right.
you just need to get your body next to someone else's body who has it figured out and
Right.
say, body,
Start to
learn from their body.
learn that
You know,
wisdom.
and then you're starting to surround yourself. You're
Yeah.
changing your conditioning, you're changing your environment,
Yeah.
and you're putting yourself in places that are going to help you cultivate the things that you most desire and you most want. So if you don't know how yet, where to start, just start there. Look
Right. Start
around
looking for
yourself.
someone who
Yeah.
actually has something that you want or something that you admire. I love
Yep.
that.
Yeah,
I think
whether
this
that's a
is a
marriage that you wish you had, or whether it's a job you wish you had, or whether it was kids you wish you had, like get yourself in their field.
I think this is a really important point you're making, Leah, especially for men, because there's this sort of you can do it all yourself. If you're not a real man unless you can figure it all out yourself and do it all yourself. And there's
So
so
painful.
much isolation in our environment, especially now in our culture. And these, what's the word? These nuclear families, right? Where we're trying to figure it out and do it all by
Yes.
ourselves.
Yeah.
And especially like a lot of the couples that I work with, I'm like talking to the man and I'll be like, well, who's your man muse? Who inspires you? Who in your life do you
look up to?
Look up to and want to have that and be like? And many of them don't have a reference for a man muse. I think women should have man muses. I think men should have man muses. I think any gender should have a man muse and a
I
shero.
love that.
You
I
know,
love that.
you
A
gotta
man
have
muse
these
hero.
models
Yeah.
I love that.
that you can be inspired by and know that there's no separation
right.
between
There's
you
no
and them.
separation. And that if you, that one of the things I see, I think I wrote this in the book too. It's like sometimes when we start to have a desire, we have to feel the gap. Like if we have to, we see, oh, I want that and I'm not there. And feeling the gap between where I am now and where I'm going can feel shameful because, some idea, if I was good enough, I would already have had it. But to let that go and like you're saying, right, have the man muse and ask questions and start to put yourself around other people who know what you want to know or who have what you want to have. And stop that isolation, like you're saying.
Right. Until you can get to the place where you've questioned, why am I afraid to ask for help?
Mm-hmm.
And you can really start to confront, because I think that's another thing of shame that men wrestle with more so than women, which is like, it's embarrassing to ask for help, or it's shameful, or there's something wrong with you, or it's weak to ask for help. So that ends up prolonging the transformations that you want. So if you can first just get yourself in the environments of people that you admire, then start to question that. Start to really push back, talk back to that thought.
Talk back to those beliefs and those voices in your head that are not necessarily there because they're true.
I will tell
and they're
you,
probably not yours to begin with.
No, they're not.
Someone who wants to like really make love to you is going to be impressed by the strength it takes to say, I'm gonna go get some support with this.
And
if you don't like the word help, then I'm gonna go look for more support. I could really use that in my life. This person seems to have figured it out. I'm gonna ask them. And just like, it's really interesting from a business standpoint, they always say that women are the best for word of mouth, because we talk to each other. Oh, you look good. You're doing yoga.
I want that.
What's your new skin? And are you having more sex? Tell me more about that. Like, we will just share. It's usually easier for us. Where men is, they're not going to offer their opinion or their advice unless someone asks them directly. They don't share for the sake of sharing. If someone asks them a question, then they'll share. And so it's also, don't be afraid to ask your friends for advice. To be like, hey, have you ever tried prostate massage? Have you heard about that? I hear people really, I'm not gay, man, but it's like whatever you're afraid of. Like, but or hey, I tried a finger in my butt and I really liked it. Have you yet? Because let me tell you, like,
and you don't always have to start with the butt if that's the thing that scares you the most, right? Start by saying something else. Okay, ladies, this is amazing, and there's so much here, and I think we could do this forever. For time's sake, as we're going to start to wrap up, what would you say? Is there anything, like any lingering things or things left hanging that you feel like you want men to know?
I would just say that I think we're moving into a time right now where listening more to the inside and what's going on, bringing more yin forward. You know, we have been valuing the yang for a long, long time now, and undervaluing the yin. So still, we got to do the yang stuff, get the checklists, and hold the space, and be the man, and all that. But bring more of that yin forward, that listening within. Like, listen to your heart, take some time for yourself, walk out into the woods, have a conversation with a tree. Like, just bring more of that, not femininity forward per se, if that scares you,
Magnetism.
but this yin. Yeah, it's a receptive. The yin's greatest superpower is to receive. And in the Tao, when we look at yin and yang, the yin is the life force. It's the juice. Like, of those two, it's the more important one. So really let that rise inside of you and be a container for that. Let your perceptions of how you ought to be in the world expand and open as this essence becomes alive inside of you. A lot of times with my clients, I am like, what does your essence look like? What does it feel like?
Right.
What does it say? And most people don't have any idea what that is. So I would
just
say
love that you
draw
said too, like, imagine if every person listening let go of who they ought to be. Imagine if we all just let go. My kid is such a great example of this. There's no idea of like who she ought to be, right? It's like, oh my God, it's kind of mind blowing when you really let yourself let go of that thought and actually check in with, what do I like? What do I want? What feels good? What doesn't feel good to me? That inner world.
Yeah. And that is it. And part of the yin is it's always changing. That's why men get frustrated with women, because we're always changing. You know, it's never going to be the same
fluid.
one moment to another. Yeah. It's that water, that adaptability. So see, if yin doesn't work for you, think of like the element of water.
Yeah.
It can change different shape, different form, depending on its environment. It's got this adaptability. So listening deeply within and then adapting to what you're actually truly hearing, what's authentic, not what's your parents' voices or your teachers or your best friends.
Thank you. Thank you. How about you?
Yeah. On that same note, I want to give you sort of this vision. This is what I tell a lot of women, and I want to give men faith that there are so many amazing women out there who see you, who love you, who want you just the way you are, who think you are amazing and who are rooting for you. So even though it may feel like you're in a hostile environment when it comes to women, I just want you to keep your faith alive. You know, there's so many of us who just think you're awesome. And one of the ways that you can support our bodies when we're with you is to keep your heart open. And that can be really hard to do when you've had a lot of experiences with women who weren't safe, who your heart wasn't safe around. So think of it like this. If your pelvis, right, I'm going to represent your genitals, is the yang pole, is the positive pole of a battery. Its job is to send out. It is to penetrate. It is to be active in the world. Your passion. We need your passion in the world. And a woman's pelvis, her yoni, her genitals, are the yin pole. It's magnetic. It's attractive, and everybody wants in. Right. And when we're in harmony, those two batteries go together. Her attractive pull is calling your penetrative pull to meet her. And this is heterosexual. There's a whole nother framework that is the same for same-sex relationships. Awesome. But staying with this particular visual, now imagine that a woman's yang pull, her masculine, the positive end of the battery for her body, is her heart. The breasts are the physical manifestation. Her desires to be active in the world, to penetrate the world with her love, with her heart. She wants to turn you on from her heart space and light people up. And she needs to be received there. She's dying to penetrate you. And so if your yin pole is your heart, you need to know that it is magnetic. It is attractive, and we want in. You want in, baby. Just like you want in, baby. We both want in, and we complement each other so beautifully when we receive each other's masculine, when we receive each other's yang, and when we accept that our yin is so irresistible and magnetic. But this is also where we do war with each other, because when you close your heart to us, it feels like war.
Yeah.
And when we
we
close
don't
our
want to stay
pelvis to
there. We
you,
back away or
it
we
feels
start to
like
fight.
war.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we barge in on each other.
Yeah.
And we don't respect each other's right timing. It's my job as the feminine to respect your heart, to not act entitled to it, to not barge in, to not make demands on it, but to treat it as something sacred. And it's your job to treat my yoni the same way.
Yes.
You're not, it's not something to be entitled to. We're not obligated to give it to you. And when you treat it with respect and reverence, baby, we will open. But your heart has to open too, because it's gotta be a circuit.
Well said. And if there is, right, for those of you who are feeling anger or resentment or frustration or all of that, like underneath that, there is an open-hearted, there might be disappointment, there's grief, there's sadness, there's longing, right? And so, there is a pathway. That's what all three of us do this. And there are other people who do this in the world too, to support you to get to that place we've been talking about of being able to say from an open heart, this is what I want, and this is what I need, and this is what's possible for us, and this is who we could be together. So we love you. I love doing this with women who love men. And thank you so much, ladies, for being here today. And where can men find more of you?
We have a joint business called Sex Reimagined. You can go to sexreimagined.com to find out more about that, or check us out on any of the podcast platforms out there, Sex Reimagined podcast. And then I am at drwillowbrown.com, and Leah is at
moreloveworks.com. And we've got lots of online masterclasses for men's sexual mastery. So come check them out.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here and for the work you do in the world.
Love, love, love.
I'm so glad you joined us for today's episode of Man Alive. I hope you enjoyed our conversation and it gave you something to consider and explore in your life. If you like what you heard, I'd be so grateful for you to subscribe and write a quick review that helps men like you find us. And again, head over to shanajamescoaching.com/quiz or text the word ALIVE, ALIVE, to 44144 to get a sense of how you can become a better lover and leader. You'll start to see how you can be both more respected and desired in your unique and genuine way. If you don't feel as confident or as excited about life or love as you'd like to be, this quiz is a really great starting point and will guide you toward a more passionate love life and a more inspiring and successful career. So again, text ALIVE, ALIVE, to 44144 or head over to shanajamescoaching.com/quiz. Join us each week for a new episode of Man Alive.